Hungry Trilobyte podcast would like to start by acknowledging these fine conventions. The Hellmouth Con. The Hellmouth Convention is back, and it's hosting a spectacular event in the place of all places, Torrance High School, the shooting location for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Join us June 15th, 2024 for one day only. Proceeds benefit the Los Angeles LGBT Center and the Ron Glass Memorial Scholarship. Visit thehellmouth.org for details. SoonerCon 32. Oklahoma City's longest-running premier pop culture convention returns June 21st through 23rd, 2024. Prepare for 3 days of cosplay, crafts, tabletop gaming, and legendary guests, all in the friendly town of Norman, Oklahoma. To give back to the community, fundraisers and a live charity auction will be held. Visit SoonerCon.com to reserve your membership. On mic today, we have Wells Thompson. How are you doing this fine evening?
Doing well. How are you doing, Aaron?
Doing great. I am really interested in this work that I found of yours. I've gotten to know MechaTon. It's a comic you created, and you've actually created a series of them, so I don't want to shortchange you there.
Yeah,
But
there's 5 so far, and we're putting out the trade right now.
if I'm just going to give somebody the Cliff Notes version, I'd kind of describe it as Voltron meets Spider-Man.
Okay.
Okay, I mean it's a team of wisecracking, not quite teens, I guess, in their early 20s characters who are kind of down on their luck, and they find the means to make a mech out of anything handy.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to a lot of really fun comic possibilities, but it's still kind of it's got its serious moments in it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we wanted to put a good balance of like very fun concepts, but still taking itself somewhat seriously, and just giving the story and characters room to breathe. I love myself like a joke a minute kind of slapstick comedy sort of thing, but we definitely wanted this to be more a little bit we kind of wanted to trick people a little bit into reading it thinking it's going to be very shallow and just kind of dumb fun, and then you get into it and realize, oh, this actually has something to say. So yeah, I adore the characters in this one.
When you build these kind of characters, when you kind of draw the reader in by having, like you say, the shallow, slapsticky cover for what's going to end up being a deeper story overall, how do you build that in? Do you draw on your own life experience, or do you just kind of follow the characters and see where their actions take you?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. We you know Dalton and I, my co-writer, we both are siblings. I'm the youngest, he's the oldest. We're not siblings together, we just have siblings. And one of the things that we feel like media always sort of fails in is showing that authentic sibling relationship, how you are constantly ribbing each other in a very lighthearted way. There's a familiarity there that a lot of comics and movies and TV shows get wrong. So we wanted to use the humor that comes from that and that relationship and make something really authentic, but also take the character seriously and see where they take us in a lot of ways. We have our big set pieces that we go to and we have our jokes that we put in, but really the story is just like, this incredible thing happens to these people. How do they react to it? And how does that build and build and build? What consequences come of that?
You're going to have me at a disadvantage here because I'm an only child. So I
Sure.
have no frame of reference for the sibling
I
factor.
think it works. I think it works for only children. Let me put,
Okay.
and I'm not the final arbiter on that, obviously, but yeah, no, I let me get her out of the way. She's in front of my microphone. But yeah, I just think that was our starting point of like where we wanted to build out the relationship from. But yeah, I think it's a book that works for everyone. It's a hit with like middle-aged kids, I would say, but it's also a hit with 20 and 30 somethings that grew up on Toonami and 40-year-olds that love Transformers and Ninja Turtles, and It's great for anyone who has that kind of Saturday morning cartoon nostalgia.
I was just thinking as you were talking there that the mech is, I don't want to say it's a timeless concept because it's kind of a late 20th century concept, but it seems
Yeah,
to be perpetually popular as time has gone on.
for sure.
The
Yeah,
earliest one I
and
can
there's
think
so
of is
many
like,
different takes on it, from
mhm.
the very like straight face and serious Gundam to stuff like Ben 10 and Megas XLR that's just very dumb but very fun.
Going back as far as I can think, it's like Mecha Godzilla would kind of be, I guess,
Yeah,
the first big one.
sure. Yeah, and Dalton in particular is a huge Tokusatsu fan. He loves Godzilla. He loves Ultraman. Grew up on Power Rangers and sort of brought that into the DNA of the comic.
And mechs in general have a kind, big monster fighting movies in general. They have a sense of chaos about them, and that's kind of what you get wrapped up in. Is that it's once they finally start fighting, things are going to start breaking. It's going to be absolute madness, and my head always goes back to how are people just not squashed dead everywhere here?
Um, yeah, I that's yeah, there always is that sort of element of sort of danger and chaos to it. You're right. We sort of play with that. At first, it's that the mechs are a little bit smaller than your typical kind of mech anime or property would have. The hot dog cart is twice the size of a person, but not huge.
Mhm.
And there's destruction, but it's not overwhelming. And then they grow bigger and bigger, and so we sort of see some of the consequences from that as that happens. And by the fifth issue, you've got towering behemoths and monsters that are causing real damage. So
I was just thinking that that chaos that built into the mechs might kind of be a corollary to the chaos that comes from finding this power tool that allows you to create the mechs. It's like suddenly your life goes out of control.
yeah, absolutely. And there's a sense of like, you know, uh, you compared it to Spider-Man. There is a sense of like power responsibility dynamic, and whether or not they want that responsibility, it's
Mhm.
kind of been thrust upon them at this point, and they don't have a choice but to roll with it.
And there's something to be said for a superhero that doesn't immediately step into the role that they have to become comfortable with it, and they almost rebel against it a little bit to whatever degree they can. No, even though they ultimately have to do what they have to do.
Right. Yeah, I always really appreciate, as long as it's like in fitting with the character, a sense of hesitancy when this sort of awesome power is thrust upon you. And I also really appreciate someone who gets cool powers and immediately goes, "This is awesome and this is cool," because that is, there's always the little kid in you that wants to see that as well. Um, but yeah, we sort of thread the needle by when they realize what's going on, it feels great and it feels awesome, and they're uh happy to get into the action. And then once the sort of the consequences of their actions and the danger that they're putting themselves in starts to sink in, we see their reaction from that, and it gets from their point of view, it gets serious very quickly.
When you say from their point of view, is it does it seem serious to the reader?
I mean, I would say there's definitely serious moments, and there's real problems that intersect with or that the characters have to deal with beyond just punching the big monster. Uh, but we keep it lighthearted. We don't make it too much for or too much for for the reader to handle, or for that matter to like discongruous with what you're expecting to read. It's still fun, it's still light, it's still actiony, but it has that layer of like the characters are taking it seriously, and the reader has that sense of sort of stakes, emotional stakes as a result.
I'm not in the business of giving out spoilers, so I'm completely fine with leaving it at that.
Sure.
Because I want people to look at your Kickstarter. I want them to get on board with picking up the back issues on this comic. I want them to go ahead and pick up the next one.
Mhm.
How do you find the Kickstarter process? Because you've been through the process a couple of times now, and it seems to be old hat for you at this point.
Sure. It leaves me a nervous wreck every time. It never gets easier. No, I mean I have good practice with it, and I know, I've gotten really good at sort of dealing with the metrics and learning what a successful campaign looks like and how to make sure that things go relatively smoothly. But there is always a sense of like, can I be doing more? Should I be doing more? And Kickstarter is not something that gives you a lot of immediate feedback. Generally, the results you're seeing now is work that you put in 2, 3 weeks ago. So it can be very overwhelming. And learning to deal with that is a skill set in its own right. Yeah, it's a big event. It's a lot of stress, and I'm learning how to mediate that in my life without burning myself out. Not gonna say
That
100% I've gotten there yet, but but we're working toward it.
But and it's definitely tough, and burnout is definitely a real thing, especially when we live in a world where our creative endeavors typically aren't the ones that keep our lights on.
Absolutely.
And I like to talk about Kickstarter because I love Kickstarter,
Hmm.
but I recognize that it's not a one tool fits all. It doesn't solve every problem, and there are hurdles to it as well that I like to make sure that people talk about. And because you're not the only comic person out there. I know a lot of people in the audience might be thinking of launching their own Kickstarters as comic creators. What kind of advice would you give them, given that you just gave some right there?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a big part of it is sort of the emotionally managing or being able to manage your emotions during the process. Um you know, I would say look at as many active and previously successful Kickstarters as possible. See what they're doing, see what the trends like, see what the commonalities are, grab what you like, leave behind what you don't. It really you need to put in a lot of footwork before you actually launch your first campaign. And yeah, there's literally never a guarantee of success, so you need to be on top of it.
If you are wanting to go to Kickstarter as a comic creator, and let's say your dream is to publish a 30, 40 page comic, how much of that comic should be done before you actually launch your Kickstarter? Best case scenario.
Right. I mean, the more you have done, the better, because that just shortens the amount of time you have between the end of the campaign and fulfillment, which is, less of a sword hanging over your head. And also, the more you get to show off, and the more you can say that you have done. But money is a real practical concern, and I am not made of it. So generally, what we do is, for our 20-page issues, we have 5 or 6 sample pages, inked, colored, and lettered, and ready to go, on display for everyone to see, so they can get a feel for what the art looks like, what the writing is like, how the comic flows, before they commit to it. And that's generally all you need in terms of a sample, but you do need to be upfront with people. That's like, this is what we have, this is what we could afford to make right now, we're relying on you to get it done.
I like that approach because it does show the audience or the potential customer that you guys know what you're doing. You have something you can give them to kind of sample the wares, and it builds confidence that there's more to come. And you guys have a track record too, which is even better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we, yeah, this is our 10th Kickstarter.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And not all of, so far 8 have been successful, one has been unsuccessful. That was a big risk that we took, and we knew that we might not make it. We were fine, we went into that knowing that. But for the most part, we've had a really good run of things. And it's just been about building and maintaining the audience and making sure that we're putting out as high quality stuff as possible. And for that matter, making sure that when it leaves, it leaves relatively, hopefully on time, in really good condition, gets to people in one piece, and looks really good when it gets there.
Just got a random question for you to get back to the comic itself here.
Sure.
Are you at all influenced by gaming webcomics?
um not particularly. Like, don't get me wrong, I love XKCD, and there's a bunch of web comics that I really enjoy. But in terms of your, like, your Penny Arcade and your Control Delete, I was never super into them when they were when they were really big and sort of the main thing to look at. And I've only become really aware of them in retrospect. Um, I would say more my influences are like uh there's a lot of really great indie comic creators I can point to as influences. Brian Lee O'Malley and Dan Waters, Ram V, all of whom have really incredible books going on right now. But also I have also like my I grew up wanting to be a prose writer, and I still want to be a prose writer, and have written a lot of prose. So yeah, Kurt Vonnegut and Jennifer Egan and Joseph Heller, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Ernest Hemingway, J.D. Salinger. Those are like the people I think back to as like my influences. And then I love movies as well. I will absolutely devour cinema if I can. So yeah, I love works like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and the Scott Pilgrim movie is my favorite movie of all time. Do not at me; it's amazing. uh, so yeah, there's tons of stuff that I draw from. Yeah, web comics are relatively new for me, and most of the ones that I read and keep up with are either gag a day, like relationship style comics, or really niche stuff that my friends are putting out.
I just felt the need to ask that just because there were moments early on in the comic where it felt like a more refined, more nuanced version of some of the web comics I'd read ages ago, like you said, in their
Sure.
heyday.
Oh, there's definitely the element of like, a couple guys sitting on a couch, talking about, stuff that doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I can totally see why you would say that.
A-
But and
a-
I think part of the joke, especially as issues go on, is like, hey, why can't we go back to the couch? That was nice.
And that's something that the couch conversations, it's something that our generation really does seem to get a lot.
Mm,
Kind of starting with the Seinfeld show about nothing thing, and we had so many iterations of that concept. Um,
right.
and you said that on your website, you said that you have been telling stories for as long as you can remember, and I can see that in what you're describing there, talk about Vonnegut and cinema, and I really would like to know how you made the transition to deciding you wanted to do a graphic story rather than just sitting down and cranking out a novel, because clearly you have ambitions in both areas.
Sure. Well, it's sort of a confluence of a bunch of stuff. This is like where the road ended, but I've tried a little bit of everything, and I've been rather successful at a number of things. Um, I went to school for screenwriting, and I have won like some awards in film festivals and such. And that's really great, but I found that process really difficult because you're relying on so many people to pull their weight. If you've ever looked at behind the scenes of even small films, it's just monstrous productions. It's expensive. If anyone slacks, the whole thing falls apart. Frankly, the fact that any movies get made ever is a miracle, and you should appreciate it. Good doesn't have anything to do with it. Hi, baby. So I got a little bit annoyed and frustrated with that, and that's what spurred me on to start writing prose more. And the problem I had there, aside from the fact that it's just lonely, it's you and a computer, and day in and day out, and that's all it is. Um, it's also brutally difficult to sort of break into from a publishing perspective. It's very gatekeepy, and there's a million people trying to do it, and there's all these, hundreds of years of bad ideas and backlog and middlemen standing between you and trying to get a book published. Um, and it was sort of being frustrated with both of those systems. I Dalton, my good friend and co-writer on this book, convinced me to give comics a shot. Um, and it's sort of the perfect marriage of the two. I get to it's still collaborative, so I get to work with a lot of people and bring a lot of people together to create a common vision that is, stronger than maybe what I would be making on my own. But it's not so big that I feel like I'm going to pull my hair out because, some random person down the line, forgot to bring a green binder or something. Uh, it's a little bit more reined in. Uh, it gives me the space to tell stories at a good scope without worrying too much about things like production costs and whatnot. There's still money involved, but it doesn't get nearly as expensive as it can in film. Um, and furthermore, the more I do it, the more I love the medium itself. It's not like I'm doing this until I can get, my novel made or my screenplay made. I love comics for their own sake, and I would, given the choice, I would still continue to work here, even if I would also throw in like a novel or something as well.
Well, that's pretty darn cool. Now, if you're going to, you've got a Kickstarter ready to go here.
Mhm.
So obviously somebody goes ahead and they become a sponsor of the Kickstarter, they're
Sure.
going to get a comic book.
Yes.
What are you throwing in at the top of that to kind of encourage somebody to give a little bit more?
Absolutely. Well, every whether you get a digital copy or a physical copy, your name goes in the book as sort of a sponsor of it on the thank you page. We have we start low with the digital copy just to encourage everyone to come in and get it. You also get a digital copy if you get a print copy of any kind. And aside from our standard copy, we also have a deluxe edition, which includes a ton of back matter, page breakdowns, extra scripts, stuff that no one's seen before, character designs, logo breakdown. If you want to know like everything about how the comic works and functions and see a bunch of cool stuff that no one else is going to see, we have that there for you. We also have a really beautiful hollow foil cover that's just like a beautiful display copy, as well as 30% off everything that we have, from posters to a tier that is just 30% off everything. You get stickers, posters, all 3 copies of the book, signatures on everything, for, yeah, 30% off what it would be. So we kept the selection kind of simple and small, but there's still definitely enough for you to pick your poison.
I was actually going to joke about there being a hollow foil cover. The fact that you said there actually is one, I love that.
Yeah,
It is such like a cliche 90s gimmicky thing, but it's like, no, but it was popular for a reason. They look awesome.
they look really good. And the other thing is we tend to do glossier, heavier paper on the hollow foil covers because we're already going with, something that looks really distinct anyway. So on those, the colors really pop. And it's just, if you like that style of just like heavy, glossy, beautiful, rich color scheme and heavy pages, then yeah, it's absolutely worth going for.
And there's something to it that just shows that this is going to be something special compared to everything else that's on the newsstand that week.
For sure.
Yeah. And when it's something that's the product of it's a labor of love, but it's a project that's coming out of a small team that truly cares about the medium, that has a great idea that they just want to get to the world. I think that's worthy of something like that.
For sure. No, we included it as sort of a we'll see how people feel about this at first, and the more we did it, the more we realized that no, people really like it. So yeah, absolutely. We at this point, it's just why wouldn't we? Uh, yeah, people usually someone is going to sign up for it, and usually it's a decent amount. So
Well, that's darn cool, and I'm glad that there's people that are able to keep that there's small companies able to produce that sort of thing and make it viable. Uh, because Kickstarter has become is it literally the largest publisher of comics right now, even above Marvel and DC when you factor in all the independents that are working through it? I
I
think I heard
have
that.
I have not seen those numbers. It wouldn't surprise me. As far as Kickstarter is concerned, I don't remember if it's total dollars or number of projects of successfully funded, or maybe it's both. But I believe comics is number two, behind either technology or video games for Kickstarter as like as far as topics go. Kickstarter comics are huge, and there's a ton of them being made, and a lot of them are really really good. One of my favorite comics of all time was made on Kickstarter. It was actually one that encouraged me to go to Kickstarter as a really competitive, not prestigious, but like there wouldn't be a stigma attached to it generally, which is what I was worried about going into it. Is people are going to think, it's a Kickstarter comic, who cares? But no, there's some of the best comics I've read in the last 2 or 3 years have been Kickstarter comics, and I definitely think that any fan, especially of indie stuff, should be on there actively seeking out new stuff, because there's just bursting with imagination and really incredible books and creators on there to be seen.
There's something about like when you say Kickstarter technology, there's definitely that's a whole different world, and it
Yeah,
comes
it's
with
very different.
it
But
is, and
and the numbers they bring in are massive, to the point that it feels like we share a name. We're under the banner of Kickstarter, but it could not be more of a different like thing going on over there.
in a good way for you. What I like to point
Yeah.
out to people is that I there's a whole bunch of technology projects I could point to that went way sideways.
Yeah.
And eh, that's because when you're making technology, you're making something completely new. The engineering has to be done from scratch. The production has to be done from scratch. The distribution done from scratch. It's a whole level of complication. But when it comes to something like a film or a comic or a book,
Yeah.
something where the means of making it is well established, we just need the content to go into it. It's a much lower level of risk, and that it's worth taking a chance on somebody as long as they show that they can find their ass from a hole in the ground. Okay, I mean,
Right.
seriously.
Yeah, there's definitely there's more sort of resources available to comic creators, because comics have been a thing for over 100 years now.
Hmm.
uh it's not the easiest thing in the world to put a comic together, but with the right know-how, anyone can do it. And yeah, if you see someone that has 5, 10 projects under their belt, you can be reasonably certain that when they get funded, you're going to get a comic at the end of the day.
100%.
Yeah.
Like I said,
And for this project in particular, we all the art is done, everything is ready. We're just waiting until the last day, the money to come in, so that we can ship it to the printer and get it sent out. But this will be a very fast turnaround, because there's no art to make. We're done.
so when you're done and that comic ships, how far out are you seeing this project go? Where is uh, MechaTon
MechaTon.
going from here? Sorry, I forgot my foot there.
We have two more arcs planned.
Mhm.
And right now we're planning on doing two arcs, 3 issues each, 32 pages per issue. So about the same number of pages as the first arc, but split up a little bit differently, so that we can get it out a little bit faster. Just the nature of Kickstarter being what it is. Um, so in terms of how long that's going to take, I I hope it doesn't take forever. But the more support that we see and the more people who are interested in it, the faster we can get it out. Truthfully. So yeah, I see it going at least to issue, what would that be, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then if if it turns around and people want more, and we have a good, we feel like we have a good way of continuing it, we would love to make more. If I could work on MechaTon for the rest of my life, I'd be happy to do that.
I want to help you make that happen for sure. If there's anything I can do to help you out, let me know. Where can people find your adventures on the web? Where can they check the Kickstarter? Where can they follow the future adventures of MechaTon?
Absolutely. Well, the Kickstarter launched today. You can find it at kickstarter.com. Just search for MechaTon. It'll be the first thing that comes up, probably. I hope. And if you need somewhere more specific to look, you can find me on Twitter at WellsThomp, THOMP. You can also find my website, wellsthompson.com. That will have a link to it as well. Also of note, I have a newsletter, Comics, Cats, and Cocktails, where we talk about all those things. That is the easiest way to keep track of me and what I'm doing, because, Twitter is, we'll call it, unreliable at times.
I would just say that. Yep.
Yeah. So if you need a place to keep an eye on stuff that I'm putting out, whether it's preview pages for comics or when the next Kickstarter is launching, that is always the best place to check.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'll be glad to have you back anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.